So we're excited now to move into our second category, which is called leadership and visioning. Our very first question in this category, I'd like to ask Debbie, could you offer a few suggestions on how to effectively and gracefully supervise staff as a young or new minister? That's specifically with regard to like communication and casting vision, etc.
Yes, I think it begins in communicating and working with other people. I think it begins in respect for that person. They're created in the image of God. God brought them to you and them together. So who they are is incredibly important to you. So you're constantly learning from other people. I think of people and our relationships. People come from such a wealth of experience and background, and you come from the same broad background, and you come together with that person. And so you are working with them and all of their wonderful skills and talents and experiences that they bring to the issue or the situation or the work that day. So I strive to learn from them to work in a win-win situation, not my way, your way, but our way. And I pray a lot. As Judy said, we have an audience. We have an audience of one. I report to the Lord. And so everything that I am doing in my relationships, I'm praying, trying to understand his leading, and I'm praying for that person. And when you're praying for others, it changes your relationship. So that's
Definitely. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah. When we take one another, we see each other with God's eyes, that changes everything. So certainly a good perspective to have. And as a follow-up then, in this category, Debbie, what are some good resources or ways for a minister early on to learn fiscal responsibility or budget management? And then how do you learn these skills? Because we don't all get them in seminary.
Well, can I flip the order there? Because I didn't get them in seminary either. I did budgets. I did at least one budget per year for 30 years in my workplace. And for 10 years, I did 45 budgets a year. So I've had a lot of experience with budgets, and plus I have 2 degrees in business. So that's how I learned. But I would say the most important and the key thing through all of that was I learned to ask questions. You need to ask questions to find, and there's a person who did it before you, or a knowledgeable person who is in the church or on the board. Learn, ask questions, and don't be ashamed or for asking questions, because that's how we all learn. Those financial reports, get them and figure them out. There's just no other way. Ask questions, study them, be sure to understand where the money came from and where is it going. And it may take, you may have to write yourself notes to remember that. And I still do. With all of my experience, I still write, what is a debit? What is a credit? Da, 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 just to help me remember. I would say also maintain good checks and balances. And what I mean by that is maintain two signatures on things. You don't want to have someone in absolute control of a particular set of finances, a bucket of money. You want at least 2 people, 2 signatures, 2 sets of eyes looking at it. It's just good stewardship, and take the high road. What I mean by that is good open communication. Open it with your board, with your congregation, and if you make a mistake, admit it. If you and work together to figure it out. I'm the treasurer of our local church right now, not the pastor in this local church. I work more at the district level, but I've been tapped to do treasury for the past 2 years. I accidentally selected, or PayPal selected my home account, I mean the church account, when I was ordering a pair of shoes. So the church ordered a pair of shoes for me. And I had to admit, I had to let the board, y'all, you won't believe how I did this, but we worked it out. I was able to write a check to reimburse the church for my shoes that PayPal helped me buy. So you just want to keep it all above board and explain, when you make a mistake. Remember that it's God's money and it's God's church, and we're to be stewards and to be the best steward of his church and his money. 2 resources that I would recommend, and these are awesome. One is called God Owns It All, and it's Finding Contentment and Confidence in Your Finances. That's by Ron Blue. It is a devotional type study, but it gives you lots of good information. We recommend it to all of our pastors in the whole Wesleyan Church. The other one is Just Change the Way I Look at Finances Totally. And that's kind of like your thinking of Dr. Seaman's book. This one is A Spirituality of Fundraising, and it's by Henry Nouwen. It's like a pamphlet, but it just turns your whole way of thinking about finances and fundraising, and I would highly recommend it.
Cool. That's exciting. Thank you for those resources and for all of those things. And, ordering shoes reminds us that we're human, right? And like you said, they're God's resources and we are God's people. And so being able to work through that, not be afraid to say, oops, but it can be fixed. So I think that open communication channel is so important. So thanks for sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience in that. All right. Next, I would love to ask Kim. Kim, could you share a story about a time that you were able to delegate responsibility to a staff member or a layperson? And then what are the key features that made it successful? And then did you learn anything?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think what I've learned in delegating responsibility well to a staff member or layperson is that with each person, I have to find that balance of providing support while not micromanaging them, and trusting them with the responsibility without abandoning them. So for an example, there's a layperson who's one of our leaders, and she has been a small group leader for years and years and years. So she's always led in that capacity for a long time. But over the last few years, she has been one that I have tapped several times, like to first lead a team of other small group leaders, and then as a team member for our Equip team. And now she is the main leader of our new discipleship opportunity called Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. And all along the way, I have felt that she could have done this without me. Like, she's high capacity, very committed to Jesus. But what I've discovered that has made this successful is that she needed the assurance that she had my full support all along the way. And not only that, but if I was going to do something, if I said I was going to do something, then I had to follow through with it. Even if it was just simple, like, hey, I'm going to make some copies, I'll make those copies for you. And then if I didn't follow through, then that, what would that have communicated to her? So I've learned that following through is one of the biggest lessons I've learned, following through with doing what I said I'll do. And then the other thing that has made it successful was that over time, she and I have shared vulnerably with each other, as we did with our other team members. And, that took time. And we would pray, and we built trust with each other. And so in that setting, when you build trust, then delegating responsibility or asking them to step up is a lot easier to do, because they know where you're coming from and they have that support and understanding of your heart, and you understand theirs. And in this instance, I used to be really intimidated by her because she's very opinionated and intelligent and articulate. And I was like, gosh, this is just too much. But God did a work in both of us. And what was really cool is that we didn't give up on each other. So at times it got a little messy, but we didn't give up. And then another key feature was listening. And I've heard that mentioned a couple of times already, that I used to think I had to have all the answers, that's what people were looking to me for, were the answers. And I've learned that I don't have to have all the answers. Thank God, because I don't. So learning to listen, listening to God and listening to others is a skill that I'm still developing. In fact, I feel like that's this year's what God is saying. This is what I'm teaching you this year. This is to be a better listener. And so that takes practice. And I've learned that when I'm delegating responsibility, that if I'm not listening to people and they know that, they get discouraged and feel like I don't care. And they'll often give up, because why bother if I'm not even giving, them attention to listen. And I learned what this leader really needed from me was to be a sounding board, and to give her support that empowered her to continue to lead and to branch out in ways that God was calling her to, and just being able to say that to her, to empower her. And so now she leads the entire emotionally healthy discipleship team. And I feel like I'm really not needed, but yet, and I just know that the support and encouragement, and sometimes just helping her to see where God is at work when she gets discouraged, is helpful. And also I've learned that the success of ministry, like a ministry project or course or whatever, that's not what's important. It's really not. What's important is the discipleship of the staff and the lay people that are leading. They are the ministry, because out of that flows all the other ministry that God is doing. And if I don't get that part right, then the rest doesn't matter. So that's what I've learned. And that's my example.
I just want to say, preach. That's awesome, Kim. You have a really blessed church, for them to feel confident in walking out their own calling of ministry in their everyday work and for the church. That is not always the case in many churches. And so it's really empowering to hear you speak about how you're able to walk with your congregation members and encourage them in their gifts. So that's really cool. My second question for you, and the last question of this category, is, Kim, what are some suggestions that you would have for a young woman to confidently lead elders or longtime church members through change or differences?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this question, so I'm just going to share just my experience, I guess. People have great difficulty with change, because with change, there's always loss. There's an unknown. And as a pastor, you need to acknowledge that and not gloss over it, because it's very real to people. And it's easy for people, including the pastor, to default back to the status quo when things get hard. And so the change process, you have to be willing to walk with people through that, and not just assume that just because you have a great idea or you feel like God is leading the church a certain way, that you can just run on ahead and leave everybody and hope everybody else is going to catch up. Because that's not going to happen. You're going to look back and they're all going to still be back there. So there is a book, I highly recommend this book. It's called Tempered Resilience by Todd Bolsinger. And that book really speaks to how ministry leaders can address change, no matter what age you are, or gender or whatever. It's just a really, really good book, because a lot of it starts internally with you, and how you're addressing things internally. And I know that as a young woman, it is easy to feel intimidated by the successful people in your church, or get frustrated when people are stubborn or who seem to deliberately sabotage you. And even those, but you have to remember that even those people get scared sometimes, are nervous about change and differences. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think that sometimes we feel like we have to have it all together, have all the answers, or win every argument, or pray, please God, don't let so-and-so come to this meeting because you're afraid they're going to challenge you, and you don't have the answer or don't know the answers. So I find that humility goes a long way with people. Listening, like I said earlier, being a learner, asking questions. All of this is important, because you want to find those people who are hungry, who are they're hungry to go deeper with Jesus. They may be your early adopters of change. You want them to understand why there's change happening, and so you want to bring them along with you. You want to address the fears. You don't want to belittle people at all. And you want to pray and find those people in your church who are prayer warriors, who will pray with you, because God will make a way. But he's not going to do it if you're just like the lone person saying, this is what we're going to do. He just does. I have not found that he works that way. And then you've got to show up. Your presence speaks volumes to people. And whether it's they see you at a funeral that you're not officiating, but there's some family member of theirs, or a ball game or a play, or additional hospital visits, or whatever, wherever it is, or show up. Because if they don't know that you care about them as people before you care about this new way that God is leading them, it's going to be really hard for them to trust you in that change. And again, follow through. That's a big one. And don't be fake. Like, I think sometimes we feel like we have to put like some super pastor face on or something. So there's another book I recommend. It's called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzero. And it looks like this. I brought this one. I didn't bring the other one, but I forgot to bring it. But that one, that will help address the things in you to help you be your real self, and not lead out of your false self that wants approval, or doesn't want to make mistakes or disappoint people. You want to lead out of the way God has created you. And anyway, so that's kind of how I would hopefully, that's what I have found to be helpful in leading people that are, if I was, I'm not as young anymore, but I wish I had known that when I was.
Yeah, such good points, Kim. I won't make a new face or something that's like super pastor to put on. Like, we just have to be real with one another. And I love your perspective on doing life with the people as you're leading them through, because you're right, like caring for people first before caring about the change that happens is how people are going to be more willing and open to listen to it. So thank you.